I work the night shift at a 24-hour bar and grill just outside Richmond, Virginia. It's tucked behind a gas station on a quiet service road, the kind of place you'd never notice unless you were really looking for it, or lost. We mostly serve truckers, late shift workers, and college kids too buzzed to go home. It's not glamorous, but the tips are decent, and the regulars don't give me too much trouble. I've been here for about 3 years now, long enough to know the regulars by name and the weird creaks of the floorboards by heart. The place has a vintage vibe, red leather booths, wood-paneled walls, and an old jukebox in the corner that mostly plays songs from before I was born. Management keeps the place looking the same on purpose. It's part of the charm, they say. Nothing too strange had ever happened during my shifts, until one particular night last fall. It was a Monday, and unusually dead. No music playing, no chatter, just the soft hum of the fridge behind the bar and the occasional clink of ice from the soda machine. I was halfway through wiping down the counter when I noticed a man sitting at the last table near the window. I hadn't heard the door open. That's what threw me off first. The front door makes this awful creaking sound when it opens, and I always listen to it, even when I'm in the back. But somehow, this guy had just appeared. He was older, 60s maybe, wearing a dark green coat and a black flat cap. From the bar, I couldn't see his face well. His head was slightly tilted down like he was looking at the menu, but he never flipped a page, just sat perfectly still. I walked over to greet him. As I got closer, something about his posture struck me. He wasn't moving at all. He was not breathing heavily, not shifting in his seat, just still, like a photograph. I politely said, "Hey there, how's it going?" Like I always do, but he didn't answer, didn't even flinch. I tried again, louder this time. "Sir, can I get you something to eat or drink?" He slowly looked up at me, and I froze. His eyes were the most sunken I'd ever seen, like two dark hollows set too deep into his skull. His skin was pale, almost grayish, and thin, like it had been stretched too tightly over his face. But his expression, it wasn't threatening, just wrong. Like someone trying to mimic a normal person but missing the subtle details. He didn't say a word, just shook his head slowly and went back to looking at the menu. I stood there for a moment, completely thrown off. Then, feeling a little stupid, I turned around and walked back behind the bar. Maybe he was mute, or it's just weird. Either way, I figured I'd let him be and check on him again later. I got distracted by a delivery order and forgot about him for a while. When I finally looked back at the window booth, my stomach dropped. There were now 2 people sitting there. A woman had joined him, older, like him. Long gray hair tucked behind her ears. Same pale, almost translucent skin. She wore a blue shawl draped over her shoulders and sat rigidly upright, hands folded neatly on the table. Just like the man, she wasn't speaking or moving, just staring at the table like they were waiting for something. I walked over again, trying to keep my voice light. "Hi there. You folks doing okay?" They didn't answer. This time, neither of them even looked up. I noticed that their eyes weren't on the menu or even at each other. They were both staring at the exact same point on the table, an empty napkin dispenser. I stood there awkwardly for a second, then slowly backed away. I wasn't scared yet, not really. But something felt wrong, unnatural. The bar had always been quiet, but that night it felt still, like the air itself had thickened. Around 3 a.m., I decided to approach again, this time with a pitcher of water and 2 glasses. I figured maybe they were just weird but thirsty. As I got to the table, I almost dropped the pitcher. Both of them had turned their heads. They were watching me walk toward them. Their expressions hadn't changed. Blank stares, dead eyes, skin like wax. I placed the glasses down slowly, pouring water without saying a word. I didn't want to speak. Something told me not to. As I poured, I looked down at their hands. Both pairs were bony and motionless, resting flat on the table. But the woman's fingers were twitching, just slightly like involuntary spasms. It was rhythmic too, like a heartbeat. Her fingernail kept striking the edge of the table in perfect intervals. I left the pitcher and backed away. A minute later, I turned around to check on them again. They were gone. No sound, no movement, just gone. Like they had never been there. The booth was empty. No used napkins, no water stains on the table. Nothing. The glasses were still full, untouched. I ran out into the parking lot, half expecting to see them getting into a car, but the lot was completely empty, except for my own car and the delivery guy's pickup. I went back inside and stood there in silence for a while. Then, I noticed something on the floor under their booth. A wet spot. It was dark, almost black, and thick. I leaned down and touched it with a napkin. It left a deep crimson smear. Blood. But not fresh. It had that sticky, half-dried consistency. I called my manager and told him someone might have gotten hurt. He told me to clean it up and fill out a report if needed. Classic. The weirdest part? When I looked at the security footage later that week, out of pure curiosity, I saw myself repeatedly walking over to that booth. But the booth was empty every time. There was no sign of the man, no sign of the woman. Nothing. I stopped working the overnight shift not long after that. I just couldn't do it anymore. I don't tell this story to many people, because who would believe it? I barely believe it myself. But sometimes, when I pass by the bar late at night, I swear I see a faint glow from the last booth near the window, like someone's waiting to be served. Before we dive into the next story, if you're here for the first time, please consider subscribing to our channel and clicking the bell icon so you won't miss any of our upcoming stories. Your support truly encourages us and helps this channel continue to grow. And don't forget to share these stories with your friends and family. Thank you. Breakups hit everyone differently. For me, it was like a slow, dull ache that just wouldn't go away. It had been 4 months since Adam and I called it quits. No big drama, no betrayal, just two people drifting apart. I kept telling myself that we were doing the right thing, that this was what growth looked like. But it didn't stop the lonely nights or the echo in my apartment that used to be filled with his voice. I did everything I could to distract myself, ran more, cooked more, tried new hobbies. Nothing really stuck. Eventually, I went back to an old comfort. Bars. Not the loud kind with thumping bass and blackout nights, but the mellow kind. The kind where the bartender knows your name by the second visit, and nobody judges you for drinking alone. I had a few favorites downtown, but one in particular became my regular spot. It was a small place called the Bay Room. Tucked between a laundromat and a pawn shop, it was the kind of place you'd miss unless you were looking for it. Dim lights, cracked vinyl booths, and a pool table in the back that leaned slightly to the left. The drinks were cheap, and the crowd was predictable. Mostly older men, a few working-class women, and me, the quiet girl with a whiskey neat and a notebook. I liked going there midweek when it was quieter. That night was no different. It was a Tuesday, raining lightly. I walked in around 9:30 p.m., nodded at the bartender, Wes, and took my usual spot at the far end of the bar, where the light above buzzed softly. No one ever sat directly next to me. I was nursing my second drink when I saw him. He walked in alone, late 20s, maybe early 30s. Tall, with a camera slung around his neck, and a vintage windbreaker that looked straight out of a thrift store. He didn't seem drunk, didn't seem particularly social. He scanned the bar slowly, then sat one stool away from me. Wes greeted him. "What can I get you, sir?" The guy smiled a little and said, "Gin and tonic, please." His voice was soft, polite. There was nothing strange about him at first, but I kept catching him glancing at me. Not staring, but like he was waiting for something. Eventually, he spoke. "That's your sketchbook?" I looked down at the notebook in front of me. I'd been doodling nonsense. A beer glass, a ceiling fan, my own initials. Nothing worth showing. "It's just a journal," I replied non-committally. "I used to keep one of those," he said. "I'd write things I saw, people I met, photos I took." I nodded, unsure how to respond. He gestured to the camera around his neck. "This thing's seen a lot of weird stuff, bars especially. People let their guard down when they drink. You ever notice that?" "Yeah," I said. "They do." He smiled again. It wasn't warm, exactly like someone who'd practiced smiling but hadn't gotten the hang of it. We didn't talk much after that. He sipped his drink and kept to himself. I eventually forgot about him and turned my attention to a game of darts going on near the jukebox. After my third drink, I told Wes I was heading out. He nodded and slid me a water to go. My habit. I always drink one before walking home. I stepped out into the light rain and started down the sidewalk, holding my coat tight to my body. I was about a block away from the bar when I heard footsteps behind me. Steady. Not running. Not rushing. Just matching my pace. I glanced back casually. It was the guy from the bar, the one with the camera. He was a few steps behind, hands in his jacket pockets. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe he lived nearby. I slowed down slightly. So did he. I took a sharp right into an alley that led to the back of a pharmacy parking lot. He followed. My chest tightened. I stopped walking and turned around, my heart pounding. "You following me?" He blinked like I'd surprised him. "No, I'm just heading this way," he said. "There's nothing this way but dumpsters," I said. He smiled, and this time it was cold. "I like to take pictures of places no one looks at." I didn't say anything. I just turned around and kept walking, faster now. I cut across the parking lot and took the long way home, heart thudding in my ears. When I finally reached my building, I did something I'd never done before. I walked past it, just to see if he'd follow. He didn't. I got home, locked every door and window, and didn't sleep much that night. The next few days were quiet. I went to work, avoided the bar, and tried not to think about it. Maybe I overreacted. Maybe he was just out taking photos. I almost convinced myself it was nothing. Until Saturday. I was scrolling through Instagram, mindlessly liking pictures when I saw it. A photo, black and white, grainy. Photo of me, sitting at the bar, in my corner. Notebook open. The whiskey glass is half full. The caption said, "She writes things she doesn't say out loud." My blood turned to ice. I clicked on the account. It was filled with similar photos. People in diners, in parking lots, on trains. No tags, no names. All candid. All were clearly taken without permission. I reported the account and blocked it. But that didn't stop the knot in my stomach from growing. That night, I stayed in. Double-locked the door. Checked every window. Around 2 a.m., I got up to use the bathroom. As I passed the living room, I heard it. A soft tap. At the window. I froze. Waited. I crept toward the window, my heart pounding so loudly I couldn't hear anything else. I pulled the curtain back slowly. No one. But a photograph was taped to the outside of the glass, barely hanging on in the wind. It was me. Standing in that alley behind the pharmacy, looking over my shoulder. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there, staring, until my legs gave out, and I sank to the floor. The police came, took the photo, said they'd look into it, but I could tell by their tone that they didn't expect much. No fingerprint, no face, no name. After that, I moved in with my sister the next day. I haven't returned to the Bay Room and don't think I ever will. I deleted every trace of myself online, changed my routine, my hair, even how I walk. But fear isn't loud, doesn't scream or chase. It just sits with you, quiet, constant, like someone at the other end of a long, dark bar, not speaking, not moving, just watching. My life isn't what most people would call thrilling, but it's steady. I'm 39, unmarried, with no kids, and honestly, that's fine by me. I work as a bartender at a mid-level hotel bar about 15 minutes from where I live. It's not a luxury rooftop like some of the places nearby. Still, it's nice enough to attract business travelers and some locals who prefer a quiet night out. I like my job. I enjoy its rhythm. The familiar clinking of glasses, the low hum of conversations, and the way the lights blur just a little when the night stretches on. It's predictable, and I've always found comfort in predictability. I should probably mention my name is Marcus. That'll matter later. The bar is tucked into the side of the hotel lobby. Wood-paneled walls, dim lighting, and leather stools polished by years of use. Nothing fancy, but cozy. I usually work the evening shift, starting at 6 and closing up around 2 in the morning. Most nights are routine. Pour drinks, make small talk, watch people come and go. There's a certain peace to knowing what to expect. Until the night, everything changed. It was a Thursday. Slower than usual. A few scattered businessmen hunched over their laptops. A young couple whispering over a bottle of wine. Around 9:30, I noticed him. He walked in alone. Slender build, wearing a dark gray overcoat even though it was warm outside. His hair was neatly combed. Almost too neatly. He didn't look at anyone. He didn't say a word. Just chose a seat at the far end of the bar, away from everyone else. I approached him, smiling the way I always do. "Evening. What can I get for you?" He didn't answer immediately. He kept his gaze on the bar top, like studying the grain of the wood. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely more than a whisper. "Whiskey. Neat." Simple enough. I poured the drink and slid it over to him. He didn't thank me, didn't make eye contact, just picked up the glass and sipped. Some customers are like that. Quiet, private. I didn't think much of it at first. I went back to wiping down glasses and serving the other patrons. Occasionally, I'd glance down the bar to check on him. He never moved, never asked for another drink, never looked up, just sat there, fingers wrapped around his glass, sipping slowly, steadily. Around midnight, the other customers started trickling out. Businessmen retreat to their rooms. The couple disappears into the elevator. By 1 a.m., it was just me and him. I went down the bar, collecting empty glasses and giving him a wide berth. "Last call," I said, wiping my hands on a towel. He didn't respond, just kept sipping. I sighed internally. I hated having to kick people out, but rules were rules. I leaned in a little closer. "Sir, we're closing up." This time, he slowly lifted his eyes to meet mine. I froze. There was something wrong with them. His eyes were wide, almost too wide, and entirely bloodshot. Like he hadn't slept in days, his face was pale under the bar's dim lighting. Skin stretched tight across his cheekbones. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. Then he smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was slow, deliberate, wrong. He stood up, leaving the drink half finished, and walked out without a word. I watched him go, unsettled, but relieved. I locked up quickly that night, double-checked the doors, and headed home. I tried to brush it off. Maybe he was just drunk. Maybe he was sick. Weird things happen when you're tired. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something deeply off about him. The next night, Friday, was busier. More couples, more groups. I almost forgot about the man until I saw him again. Same seat, same overcoat, same blank, staring expression. Again, he ordered whiskey neat. Again, he sat there for hours without speaking. When it got late and the crowd thinned out, I felt that same knot tighten in my stomach. Like the air itself grew heavier when it was just me and him. "Last call," I said. He didn't respond. I walked toward him, heart thudding, forcing myself to stay calm. When I got closer, I noticed something that hadn't registered before. His overcoat was wrong. Not dirty or torn, but old. Really old. The buttons were tarnished, the stitching frayed. It looked like something out of a black and white photograph. He lifted his head slowly, meeting my eyes again. Same bloodshot stare. Same slow, chilling smile. Then he spoke. "I remember you." I blinked. "Sorry." "I remember you," he repeated, voice gravelly and cracked. I didn't know what to say. I'd never seen him before 2 nights ago. Before I could react, he slid off the stool and disappeared into the lobby without another word. I closed up quickly, my nerves shredded. When I got home, I triple-locked the door and left the lights on. Sleep didn't come easily that night. Saturday, I told myself I was being ridiculous. Maybe he was a regular who'd come before, but I just hadn't noticed. Maybe he was confused. I convinced myself of a lot of things. The bar was packed that night. I didn't see him. I started to relax, thinking maybe whatever weirdness had passed. I was wrong. Around 1 a.m., as I was wiping down the bar, I noticed something under one of the stools at the far end, the one he always sat at. A photo. It was small, black and white and old. It showed a man standing behind a bar, an old bar. Wood paneling, dim lights. The man looked exactly like me. Same building, same haircut, same face. But the photo was aged, cracked, and yellowed like it had been taken decades ago. I stared at it for a long time, the room spinning around me. It wasn't possible. It wasn't rational. I tucked the photo into my pocket, locked up, and drove home shaking. That night, I didn't sleep at all. Every creak of the floorboards and every gust of wind against the windows made me flinch. Around 3 a.m., the doorbell rang. I sat bolt upright. Who rings someone's doorbell at 3 in the morning? I crept to the window, peeking through the blinds. No one. I waited, heart hammering. 5 minutes later, the doorbell rang again. I looked again. Still nothing. I stayed up until sunrise, lights blazing in every room. When I finally dared to step outside, there was no one. No sign that anyone had ever been there. But sitting on my doorstep, weighted down by a stone, was another photo. This one was newer. It was a picture of me. Sleeping in my bed. The photo was taken from inside my room. My hands were shaking so badly that I almost dropped the photo. I backed into the house, bolted the door, and double-locked it. Then I grabbed a chair from the kitchen and jammed it under the handle. Childish, maybe, but I needed anything between me and whatever was happening. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I just sat on the couch, staring at the front door, every sound outside making my skin crawl. By morning, I called out of work. John, my manager, sounded concerned. I lied and said I was sick. There was no way I was going back to the bar after what had happened. The day passed in a blur. I tried rationalizing everything. Maybe some elaborate prank? Maybe a stalker? But the older photo, that's what broke my brain. That wasn't something someone could just make. It looked real. Too real. Late afternoon, I decided to drive to my parents' house. They lived about an hour away, out in the countryside. I figured getting out of town and being around family would calm me down. I was halfway there when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I shouldn't have answered. Every instinct in me screamed to let it ring. But I was desperate for answers. I picked up. There was silence on the other end. Then, faintly, I heard it. Breathing. Not normal breathing. Shallow, rapid, almost excited. I hung up and tossed the phone onto the passenger seat like it was poisoned. When I finally reached my parents' house, I felt a wave of relief. Normalcy. Safety. I hugged my mom too tightly. She noticed how shaken I was, but didn't press me. My dad poured me a stiff drink, and we watched the news without really talking. For the first time in days, I started to relax. That night, lying in the guest room, I thought maybe it was over. Maybe the distance had broken whatever bizarre thread connected me to that man. I was wrong. Around 2 a.m, I woke up again. Not to a noise this time, but to a feeling. A cold certainty that I wasn't alone. I sat up slowly, listening. Nothing. But when I looked toward the door, my heart stopped. There, on the floor, someone had slid something under the door. A photo. I got out of bed, heart hammering so loud I could barely hear anything else, and picked it up. It was another black and white photo. Me, standing in the kitchen with my parents earlier that evening, drink in hand, smiling. The photo was taken from inside the house. I almost threw up. I ran to my parents' room and woke them up, babbling about someone being in the house. My dad grabbed his old shotgun from the closet, and we tore through the place, room by room. Nothing. No broken windows. No forced doors. No sign of entry at all. My dad tried to calm me down, saying it must have been a prank. But I saw the look in his eyes. He was scared too. I didn't sleep after that. None of us did. The next morning, I made a decision. I wasn't going to run anymore. I needed answers. I drove back to town, back to the bar. When I walked in, John gave me a funny look, but he said nothing. I headed straight to the stool at the end, the one the man always sat at. There was nothing there. No photos. No signs of him. I searched the entire bar. Under stools, behind the counter, in the bathroom. Nothing. I was about to give up when something caught my eye. A small piece of paper tucked under the base of the cash register. I pulled it out carefully. It was another photo. But not of me. It was of the bar itself. Empty. Except for one figure. Standing by the far wall, near the emergency exit. The man in the overcoat. Only, he wasn't facing the camera. He was facing the wall. His head tilted at a sharp, unnatural angle. His hands pressed flat against the wood paneling like he was listening to something inside it. I stared at the photo, a cold sweat breaking out across my back. The emergency exit. I walked over to it, my heart pounding. Nothing seemed unusual. Just the steel door and the alarm box bolted to the side. But when I placed my hand flat against the door, like he had, I felt it. A faint vibration. Almost like something humming from the other side. I stumbled back. What the hell was happening? Before I could think further, the door rattled violently, like someone had slammed into it from the outside. I bolted back behind the bar, heart hammering, grabbing the first heavy thing I could find. The door rattled again and again. Then, silence. I waited, breath held. Nothing. Slowly, I crept back toward the door, and taped to it, duct-taped in a neat little square, was one final photo. A close-up shot of my face, taken through the peephole of my own house's front door.